The Thin Red Line is a 1998 American epic war film written and directed by Terrence Malick. It is the second screen adaptation of the 1962 novel of the same name by James Jones, following the 1964 film. Telling a fictionalized version of the Battle of Mount Austen, which was part of the Guadalcanal Campaign in the Pacific theater of World War II, it portrays U.S. soldiers of C Company, 1st Battalion, 27th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division, played by Sean Penn, Jim Caviezel, Nick Nolte, Elias Koteas, and Ben Chaplin. The novel's title alludes to a line from Rudyard Kipling's poem Tommy, from Barrack-Room Ballads, in which he calls British foot soldiers the thin red line of heroes, referring to the stand of the 93rd Regiment in the Battle of Balaclava of the Crimean War. The film marked Malick's return to filmmaking after a 20-year absence. It co-stars Adrian Brody, George Clooney, John Cusack, Woody Harrelson, Jared Leto, John C. Reilly and John Travolta. Reportedly, the first assembled cut took 7 months to edit and ran 5 hours. By the final cut, footage of performances by Bill Pullman, Lucas Haas, and Mickey Rourke had been removed. One of Rourke's scenes was included in the special features outtakes of the Criterion Blu-ray and DVD release. The film was scored by Hans Zimmer and shot by John Toll. Principal photography took place in Queensland, Australia and in the Solomon Islands. The Thin Red Line received generally positive reviews from critics, and was nominated for 7 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Original Dramatic Score, and Best Sound. It won the Golden Bear at the 1999 Berlin International Film Festival. Martin Scorsese ranked it as his second favorite film of the 1990s. On At the Movies, Gene Siskel called it the greatest contemporary war film I've seen. Plot: Guadalcanal Cemetery, 1945. In 1942, United States Army Private Witt goes AWOL from his unit to live among the carefree Melanesian natives in the South Pacific. He is found and imprisoned on a troop ship by First Sergeant Welsh of his company. Witt is not allowed to rejoin his unit, and is instead punitively assigned to act as a stretcher-bearer for the upcoming campaign. The men of C Company, 1st Battalion, 27th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division have been brought to the island of Guadalcanal as reinforcements in the campaign to secure Henderson Field, seize the island from the Japanese, and block off their route to Australia. As they wait in the hold of a Navy transport ship, they contemplate their lives and the upcoming invasion. Among them is Private Bell, a married former officer, Private Dahl, a cocky soldier, and Captain James Starros, the sensitive company commander. Elsewhere on the ship, Lieutenant Colonel Tull, the aging battalion commander, mulls over the importance of the invasion, which he sees as his last chance for glory in combat. The company lands on Guadalcanal unopposed. They march into the interior of the island and along the way encounter natives and evidence of the ongoing Japanese presence. The company soon finds their objective, Hill 210, a key enemy position. The Japanese have placed bunkers at the top of the hill, and anyone attempting the climb will be cut down by machine gun fire. The attack commences at dawn the next day. Charlie Company storms up the hill, but are immediately repelled by heavy machine gun fire. Among the first killed is one of the platoon leaders, Lieutenant White. Many of the men are scattered in the carnage. One group, a squad led by Sergeant Keck, hides behind a knoll safe from enemy fire to await reinforcements. When they are fired upon, Keck reaches for a grenade on his belt and accidentally pulls the pin, then throws himself back so that he will be the only one killed by the concussion. At another point, Sergeant Welsh attempts to rescue a dying soldier, only to provide him enough morphine to put him out of his misery. Tull orders Starros over the sound-powered field telephone to capture the bunker by frontal assault, at whatever cost. Starros balks, stating that he will not commit his men to what he sees as a suicide mission. Meanwhile, Bell, one of the men who was with Keck's squad, covertly scouts the summit of the hill by himself and assesses the Japanese stronghold. Furious at Starros' refusal to obey his command, Tull ventures up to Charlie Company's position, accompanied by his battalion executive officer, Captain John Gaff. When they arrive, they find that the Japanese resistance seems to have lessened, and Tull's opinion of Starros is sealed. After being advised on Bell's reconnaissance of the Japanese position, Tull suggests a small detachment of men to perform a flanking maneuver on the bunker to capture it. Among the men to volunteer for the mission are Witt, who has since rejoined the company during the battle, Dahl, and Bell. Captain Gaff is given command of the detachment, and they proceed up the hill toward the bunker. A pitched battle ensues, but ultimately the American forces are victorious, and the hill is captured. For their efforts, the men are given a week's leave, though they find little joy in the respite in the fighting. The airfield where they are stationed comes under frequent enemy artillery bombardment. While the company is bivouacked, Staros is relieved of his command by Tall, who deems him too soft for the pressures of combat and suggests that he apply for reassignment and become a lawyer in the JAG Corps in Washington, D.C. He offers to arrange a Silver Star for Staros, to avoid the unit's name being tarnished for having an officer removed from command. During this time, Bell receives a letter from his wife, informing him that she has fallen in love with another man and seeks a divorce. Witt, meanwhile, comes across some of the locals and notices that, unlike the idyllic life he'd shared with the Melanesian natives when he went AWOL, the villagers have grown distant and distrustful of outsiders, and regularly quarrel with each other. Weeks later, the company is sent on patrol up a river under the command of the inexperienced Lieutenant Band. As Japanese artillery fire falls close to their positions and with communications severed, Band orders Corporal Fife and Private Coombs to scout upriver. Witt, sensing danger, volunteers to go along. The three men encounter an advancing Japanese column, but as they attempt to retreat back to the company, they are fired upon and Coombs is wounded. In order to buy time for Fife to go back to inform the rest of the unit, Witt draws away the Japanese but is encircled by one of their squads, who demand that he surrender. Despite this, Witt raises his rifle to provoke them and is killed. After Witt's body is recovered and buried by his squad mates, the company receives a new commander, Captain Basha. They are subsequently relieved of duty and board a waiting LCT, which evacuates them from Guadalcanal. Release and reception. Box office. The Thin Red Line was given a limited release on December 25, 1998, in 5 theaters where it grossed $282,534 on its opening weekend. The film was given a wide release on January 15, 1999, in 1,528 theaters where it grossed $9.7 million during its opening weekend. The film earned $98,126,565 at the worldwide box office. Critical reception. On review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 81% based on 103 reviews, and an average rating of 7.30. The website's critical consensus reads, "The Thin Red Line is a daringly philosophical World War II film with an enormous cast of eager stars." On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 78 out of 100, based on 32 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of C on an A+ to F scale. Gene Siskel described The Thin Red Line as the finest contemporary war film I've seen, supplanting Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan from earlier this year or even Oliver Stone's Platoon from 1986. A more subdued Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars out of 4, saying that it felt confused and unfinished. He wrote, "The movie's schizophrenia keeps it from greatness. This film has no firm idea of what it is about, but doesn't make it bad. It is, in fact, sort of fascinating. The battle scenes themselves are masterful, in creating a sense of the geography of a particular hill, the way it is defended by Japanese bunkers, the ways in which the American soldiers attempt to take it. Actors like Sean Penn, John Cusack, Jim Caviezel and Ben Chaplin find the perfect tone for scenes of a few seconds or a minute, and then are dropped before a rhythm can be established." In his review for Time, Richard Corliss wrote, "Some films deal in plot truth, this one expresses emotional truth, the heart's search for saving wisdom, in some of the most luscious imagery since Malick's last film, the 1978 Days of Heaven." Mike Clark of USA Today gave the film 4 out of 4 stars. Writing in the Washington Post, Michael O'Sullivan wrote, "The Thin Red Line is a movie about creation growing out of destruction, about love where you'd least expect to find it, and about angels, especially the fallen kind, who just happen to be men." Andrew Johnston of Time Out New York wrote, "Like Malick's previous efforts, Badlands, 1973, and Days of Heaven, 1978, Line is a film of incredible beauty. However, the atmosphere created by John Toll's breathtaking cinematography and Hans Zimmer's powerful score is occasionally compromised. The parade of cameos, John Travolta, George Clooney, Woody Harrelson and John Cusack briefly appear, is somewhat distracting, And the fact that Bell and Whit both have Appalachian accents sometimes makes the characters hard to differentiate. Yet, even though it's confusing at times, and perhaps a little long, line is still a film of rare substance and power. Owen Gleiberman gave the film a B- in his review for Entertainment Weekly and wrote, "The Thin Red Line could, I think, turn out to be this season's beloved, a movie too paralyzingly high-minded to connect with audiences." In her review for the New York Times, Janet Maslin wrote, "The heart-piercing moments that punctuate its rambling are glimpses of what a tighter film might have been." In a special episode of Siskel and Ebert, guest host Martin Scorsese selected The Thin Red Line as the second-best film of the 1990s behind The Horse Thief.